Hey everyone, welcome to another video. And in this video, we are going to be talking about the XIP process in XDC. And we're going to be going a bit in depth about what exactly XIP is, how the website for it looks, and how you could use XIPs in order to create your own changes which you would want to see in the XDC ecosystem. So in order to go to the XIP website, the first thing you would do is you would go to Google and you would type in XIP XDC. By going here, you will be able to see the XDC Network Improvement Proposals website. That's the XDC community website. Going here, you can see that this is the main XDC Improvement Proposals website, which is the full form of XIPs. So this has all of the information outlined for what exactly needs to be done in order to give an XIP to the XDC network for it to be implemented. So let's go one by one and see what this website says. The first thing is it gives a brief description about what an XIP is and what it does. So it describes the standards for the XDC platform, the core protocol, client APIs, and all these other good stuff. Contributing to it involves creating your own XIP, which is your improvement proposal. And that will be done through looking at the XIP1, which we will get to in a sec. Creating your own XIP using the template given, and then creating a pull request using the XIP's GitHub repository. We'll go through all three of these today. So before that, let's just quickly go through some of the status terms. The first thing is just the idea. The idea is what you have in your mind, which you want to be implemented in the XDC ecosystem. After that, the first formally tracked stage is the draft. What that means is you're going to create a draft of what is actually the thing you want to be implemented. It is just a very simple proposal. Once that draft proposal is created, it is then sent for review to the peers within the XDC ecosystem. These may be the people who are working on the XDC network, which might be the actual XDC engineers, or other people who have the technical know-how for reviewing these things in the XDC ecosystem. Once these have been sent to review, there is a last call which is set, which is a date when the XIP must either be accepted or rejected. And then there are stages where an XIP lives. The first one is the final standard, which means that it has been finally accepted or not. A stagnant one, which means it is inactive for a period of 6 months. Withdrawn means that it was proposed, but then the author has redacted it. And the final thing is living, which is a special sort of XIP, which is continuously being updated and has not reached a state of finality. The most important XIP, which is going to be perpetually in a living state, is the first XIP, which is XIP1. XIP1 basically talks about what the XIP process even is in the first place and gives rules about what you would have to do if you wanted to create your own XIP. So in order to get to that, we'll first see the various tracks where an XIP falls. So these tracks can be thought of as various buckets where XIPs can be created and classified into. The XDC ecosystem has created 6 of these buckets. The first one is core. So the core track involves any change that has to be made to the core XDC functionality, something like the consensus layer or things like that. Networking involves things related to the way peers communicate with each other, and interface is the way clients would be able to communicate with the actual XDC network. So that would involve like APIs, RPCs, and may also in the future involve things like the UIs for, let's say, XDC Pay or block scan or something like that. Then there's XRC, just like there is ERC in Ethereum, which are different requests for comments created for the different kinds of coins which can be created. Like ERC20 is the fungible token, ERC721 is the NFT version of the token. XRC is the same thing here. So these are contract standards, such as just like we have ERC20 for Ethereum, there's XRC20 and things like that. Meta is just anything that is not directly related to the technical things, but is more around the processes which need to be followed, or the tools or the changes in the environments that are going to be happening with relation to the XDC protocol, or in general just XIPs. And finally, informational might just be something related to the design, some new information. It doesn't have to necessarily, as stated here, it doesn't necessarily represent XDC community consensus or a recommendation. So now that we've gone through this, we can see the number of XIPs which have been created so far in each of these buckets. And there are 2 which have been created and which have been accepted so far. Let's go to the meta, because the meta is where XIP1 lives. XIP1 is the first XIP which is created, and that is around the way the XIP guidelines have to be created and how they will be functioning when somebody wants to create a new XIP. So if we go to that, we can see the author, who's John McBee, the status of it, which we saw in the previous website, the various statuses which we have for the XIP. We can see what type it is, so which bucket it falls under, and when it was created. These table of contents lead you to where to like different sections of the XIP, but to go over it briefly, it talks about what an XIP even stands for in the first place. So it gives a brief description of it, the rationale behind having an XIP system, which is to have a democratized way to be enabling the public, the various stakeholders of the XDC ecosystem, and just the overall community to be able to contribute to it in a way which is completely democratized. If there is someone who is a part of the XDC community who is also technically sufficiently technically inclined enough to be able to make any changes to the XDC software or any of the, let's say, networking or core layers, if there's something which they see as something to be changed, and if it passes through the XIP process, then it will actually make it into the source code of the XDC software. And that is actually true because XDC's software is open source and it is on GitHub. So if anybody wants to see what the code is and things like that, feel free to check it out. Then it talks about the various kinds of XIPs. So there's a standards track, there's a meta, and there's information. These are the tracks we spoke about previously. We also spoke about the workflow, which is the creation of the XIP, which is shepherding an XIP, which means to create it and to be the quote-unquote champion or the author for the XIP. So if you create the XIP, you are the person who is in a way responsible for creating it and working on it and seeing it to the very end. Once it is sent for reviewing, that is when various members of the XDC client teams, the various members of the XDC protocols developers, they will be able to go through it, see it, and give reviews for it, make code changes as necessary. And if it passes until the final round, then it will be merged into the code base. This shows a flow diagram for the way the XIPs would work. So once the idea is formed in someone's head, they will create a draft. That draft then goes for review, and it can always be withdrawn at any stage, but it goes for review. And once it goes for review, either it will perpetually live in a living state, or it will go it will bounce between review, last call, and things like that. So once it is reviewed fully, then it goes to last call, and if it passes, then it goes into the final stage, which makes it accepted into the XDC code base. And again, at any stage during the process, it can go into the stagnant phase as well. This is a description of what happens and what belongs in a successful XIP. So this gives the format of how the XIP should be structured. The first thing is a preamble, a tiny preamble, the abstract, which is a technical summary of what the XIP means and what it stands for. We will be seeing an example of all of this in a sec. So this will become more concrete when you see the XRC20 XIP. So the abstract, the motivation for why this was created in the first place, some technical specifications, the rationale behind it. If there is case for having backwards compatibility, then that would have some information. Some test cases which were handled when the code was written for it, the security considerations, the reference implementation. So for example, if you wanted to create the XRC 721 equivalent, which we have in the ERC world, so the ERC 721 is the NFT standard, and if you want that as an XRC, then you would create that. and the reference implementation would be the ERC standard. Security considerations, which is extremely important because at the end of the day, security is the most important thing in a blockchain, because if you cannot trust the network, then nobody will ever use it. You would only want to use a network which you can completely trust, and that can only happen when every component of the code base has gone through rigorous security testing and considerations. Finally, there is a copyright waiver which must be added. So this is more information about it. You can go through all of this information at your own time whenever you need help, or you can refer to this video. And at the very end, this also has the similar things where it has copyright and related rights waived and the citation. This is what will be needed for waiving the copyright. So now that we've seen the meta XIP, which is about the XIP purpose and guidelines, let's take a look at an example XIP which shows you what an XIP actually looks like when a technical feature needs to be implemented. So in order to do that, let's head to the XRC bucket, so to speak. And this shows that among the final ones, which means the ones which have been finally accepted into the actual code base, there is one called XIP8, which was by this author. So if we go to that XIP, we can see that this is where the discussion happened. So we can go to that link and we'll go through that in a sec, but shows you all of the same information it showed you about XIP1. Then the table of contents shows the same information, which means that this is for the implementation of standard API for tokens within smart contracts. So it's the exact same as the way an ERC20 token would work. The motivation is that it should allow any token to be reused by other applications, which is the same motivation for having an ERC20 token in the Ethereum ecosystem. Then it talks about the specifications, which are similar to the ERC20 ecosystem. So the standard API, it talks about the functions which it has and what it would return, what it should do in each case. So the supply, balance, the transfer, the ability to transfer XRC20 tokens from an address to an address, and the value given. And it should be able to check for things like, does the person who is sending this amount have that much balance or not, and things like that. Finally, it talks about the events which will be created once a transaction happens and things like that. The rationale behind it, where the author who has created this XIP has clearly stated that it was derived heavily from the Ethereum EIP20, which we can check in a sec. It's very similar to the way it has been done. This is the Ethereum EIP20. And finally, it looks at a lot of reference implementations, where the Open Zeppelin implementation is the most common one, which people use in most of the smart contracts. But this is the this is the ERC20 implementation. And I would assume the XRC20 implementation is extremely similar. Then there are some security considerations which have been spoken about, and the copyright which has been waived. You can go through this at this website, and if you have any questions, then feel free to reach out in the comment section of the video. Now that we have an understanding of how this looks, we can go to the GitHub repo of the XIP and see what exactly happened in order for it to be implemented and added to the code base. So to do that, let's go to the XIP repository, and here we can see the pull requests. So instead of seeing just the open requests, let's see all of the requests which have ever been created. So it shows that there are 3 open and there are 7 which have been closed. So there were a total of 10 pull requests, so requests for change to the XDC community repo. And then you can see 3 kinds of XIPs. The first kind of XIP is something which is just a proposal at the moment. So this one or this one, we can look at, let's say 1898. This talks about the creation of an XIP 1898, which is similar to the EIP 1898, but it will be created in the XDC ecosystem. And there's a link to that on the XDC dev forum, where the author talks about why this should even be created, the rationale behind it, and where it has been referenced from. The next kind is the one which has actually been completely merged. So this purple icon means that it has been completely merged. This green one means that it is yet to be merged. So we can look at XIP1, which has been completely merged, the token standard XIP, which has been completely merged, and other miscellaneous ones which have been merged in the past. The third kind is the kind which has not been merged, aka which has been rejected. So an example of this is XIP4. So the author wanted to create an XIP4, and Walter, who is one of the people who works on the actual XDC software and the XDC like protocol and all of these good things, he basically said that this PR is being closed because it has already been implemented in XIP1. So this code is actually actively being reviewed by the people who work on the real XDC software. And this is a really amazing thing because it enables you to get your code reviewed by probably one of the best developers in the world in the field of blockchain. And you will gain so much experience by implementing things like this. So if you have time, or if you have the itch to learn how these things work, I would suggest that you look at some of the EIPs which have been implemented in Ethereum in the past, which have not been implemented in XIP yet, like in the XDC ecosystem yet, and you could create an XIP for that. It's a very simple, easy process. As you can see, it's like, for example, here it's just 3 files which were created, and sorry, it's just 1 file that was changed, and it just gives some information about how it would work and things like that. For example, if we look at the pull requests which were closed for XIP1, sorry, for XIP1, yeah, or the token standard one, let's look at that. We can look at the files changed, and it's just a request, and that's it. It's as simple as that. And you can see all the commits which were created. So if you have the interest to learn how this works, I would highly suggest you try to use one of the EIPs and create your XIP along the same format and submit it for review to see if any of those happens. So yeah, this is pretty much a review of the whole XIP process. I would like to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I understand that this must have been one of the longer videos on this YouTube channel, but I hope you gained a lot of value from this. And until the next video, take care, stay safe, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.